Welcome along to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton. My name's Harry Colley, and I'm with you to give you the instant match reaction where at Molineux Stadium it has finished Wolverhampton Wanderers 1, Everton 1, and there's going to be a lot of questions that come out of this one, I'm sure. The main headline, of course, though, if we want to put a positive spin on it, is that David Moyes and his Everton side extend their run of undefeated streak to 8 games, but I think maybe that's where the kind of positives will stop this week and on this particular video. It's been a while since we've maybe felt so frustrated in a game. It felt very reminiscent of the previous administration, and we're going to get into it. But first and foremost, let's talk about the team, shall we? So obviously it's Everton's first game in 10 days following the 1-1 draw away to Brentford, and there was no real shocks, was there, as we've kind of come to expect, partly because of injuries, but also because, you know, it's a David Moyes side, and much like the previous manager, he kind of has his squad and he has his shape, certainly when it comes to starting at 11. So Abdoulaye Doucouré in the side for Charlie Alcaraz. Of course, the last game out, Doucouré was away because his wife was having a baby, so Alcaraz dropped to the bench, and we'll come on to him in a little bit. The only other kind of notable was that Seamus Coleman was back amongst the substitutes. Didn't make it onto the pitch, but it was good to see Seamus back amongst the squad. There's been a lot of talk about him and his role in a David Moyes Everton for the rest of this season and heading into next season. So we start off, I'd say the game itself, you know, it was a side there in an Everton side that I think were away from home and didn't want to lose, and they were up against a Wolves side who kind of huffed and puffed and really kind of didn't have killer instincts, didn't really have a lot to offer in way of causing Everton problems, and actually it was quite a disjointed half, I think, for both sides in that first half. Very little in the way of kind of clear-cut chances, very little in the way of creativity from either side until we get to the goals. So I think we'll start off, of course, with Everton taking the 1-0 lead. And yeah, it was a good goal. And I'm kind of in shock and still digesting the fact that we're looking at Everton taking a 1-0 lead in the game where Jesper Lindstrom assists Jack Harrison, who he takes his goal well. And to be fair to him, you look at a player who hasn't scored for over a year and you say you need a bit of luck, you need it to go in off of somebody else. And it does, you know, if you see the slow motion replay, his shot is taken well. I think it knocks in off of, kind of takes a couple of bobbles off of one or two Wolves defenders, and it finds its way past Jose Sarr, and Everton have a 1-0 lead. And it's good, you know, probably just about deserved. I don't think either side are going to walk away from this one saying that they feel aggrieved that they haven't won it. I don't think either side created so much. I think what will be really frustrating for David Moyes, and what I think is frustrating for us as fans right now, is the nature in how we concede the equaliser, how quickly we concede the equaliser. We didn't really hang on to that lead for very long, and off the back of that equaliser, sloppy, the lad takes the goal well, and he'd been causing Everton problems pretty much up until that point. I think Everton had fallen asleep from a couple of set pieces that they were defending, and he had a header earlier in the half that Pickford had to block. So he took his goal well and probably deserved it from a Wolves player perspective. And we have 1-1 at half time. And then at the second half, no real changes to structure or to personnel for Everton. And not so much to talk about. I think we can talk about Beto's one-on-one with Jose Sarr, where Sarr kind of gets the better of him. The thing I'd like to talk about from the second half is the introduction of Charlie Alcaraz. We know that Everton are very limited at the moment with what options they can bring off the bench onto the pitch, and we're starting to see kind of familiar names. It always seems to be now that Alcaraz or Doucouré, whoever is starting versus not starting, they tend to swap for a like for like. We then typically tend to see the likes of Irabunum come into play. We of course also saw in this one towards the end Ashley Young come into play, which isn't uncommon as well. So Moyes limited, but Alcaraz was a bright spark, and I think in a game like this Alcaraz would have thrived. I think there's been an argument made in recent weeks that Doucouré is the one you want in there for a little bit of stability, and to kind of take hold of the game in midfield, to not be overrun in midfield. And actually, I think we still were a lot of times in this game. So I think that argument is slowly losing weight, and I think it would be good to see Alcaraz start a few more games. I think he's got that kind of spark, that quality. He seems to work really well with Beto, and obviously we know there's that friendship there with Jack Harrison as well. So we know he links up well with the players around him. So it would be interesting potentially for the West Ham game that's upcoming to see Alcaraz start. But that's really kind of it in terms of the match action. In terms of how I'm feeling about it, I mean, as we said at the top, it's an 8-game unbeaten streak that can't be sniffed at. I do want to kind of take the positive gloss away from it, though, and say I've said on other forums within the Toffee Blues universe that I think Wolves was a winnable game, almost a must-win game if we want to get to that target that David Moyes set us of 40 points. I think West Ham now becomes increasingly so before we go to the likes of Liverpool, Nottingham Forest. We know Man City and Arsenal are coming to Goodison soon as well. So we know there's a harder run ahead and we've got to be picking up points. I said after the Brentford game, if you can't win, don't lose. And I think today it feels a little bit more like we should have won, and drawing feels like a bit of a loss. And that's been the way with some of these draws in this 8-match unbeaten run as well. Some have felt like wins, others have felt like losses. Today's one feels a little bit like a loss, but it's a point on the road against the side who realistically are the only other side now who are going to be sucked into this relegation battle if the sides below them start to pick up some points. And they've got 2 really big games now after us. So this was probably the hardest of their next 3. This is certainly one of the easier ones for Everton, but we'll take the point, we'll move on. So let us know your thoughts, let us know your man of the match shouts. The big news though, Everton don't lose on the road after their 10 days away from the Premier League. They extend that win to 8 unbeaten and they go into their next game against David Moyes' former side, West Ham. Let us know your thoughts on that. Let us know your thoughts on today's game, and make sure you follow the Toffee Blues on X, on YouTube, on Instagram, across all social media. My name's Harry Colley and I'll see you very soon.